Welcome, IT changemakers, to the DEX show with Tim Flower and Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
Hello again, changemakers. We're back. It's the DEX show's famous show within a show within a show. And it's an unusual episode. It's an unprecedented episode, listeners, because just 8 months ago, we had today's guest on Reality Bytes for the first time. He is Chris Sibold, Regional Director for Federal in the USA for NextThink. And Chris, you came on the show. It was a great show. You went away again, and your entire industry went completely insane for the subsequent 8 months. I mean, it couldn't have been a busier, stranger 8 months. I mean, not just in the US, but as a global news fixation, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I blame my appearance on the podcast 8 months ago. I think was the what drove it. But you're absolutely right. All kidding aside, is that it's been kind of once in a generation, multiple once in a generation changes going on in the government in the last 8 months here in particular.
A cluster occurrence, you might say. And yes, we thought we better have you back on and just soothe it all down again, because if you unleash something, you can sometimes use the same thing to calm it down again. But I mean, what you've been on the inside of all this, and certainly your customers and partners have been. How would you characterize 2025 in the federal sector based on all those conversations you've been having, or how are they characterizing it, I suppose?
So it was funny that you asked this because I was having this conversation probably in the last 2 weeks with somebody, and the analogy I would use, and looking at it from the lens of the federal IT space, and basically how is the IT organizations within these federal agencies, how are they changing and adapting, is that obviously in the news, there's a lot of change with things like reductions in force. There's a drive for government efficiency across the entire federal government. And we're seeing massive changes in terms of headcount, in some cases, budget and focus on agencies in the federal government. But I would characterize it again, looking at it from the lens of IT, is that if you go back to the way the pandemic really drove about 10 years worth of change in digital workspace in a few years, because basically every organization in the world was forced to basically figure out how to support hybrid working or remote working. And so that drove improvements or modernizations in technology, the move to collaborative tools like Teams and Zoom. And that really accelerated change that was already happening, but it made 10 years worth of change happen in two. The last 8 months looks and feels a lot similar for IT in federal, as that federal IT now is being disrupted in that similar way. Instead of the pandemic, they are now waking up to, hey, my IT organization is a third smaller or half the size it used to be, or I have a fifth the budget that I used to have. And that's causing a massive acceleration around how they do IT support in general and support the mission of their agency. So just like the pandemic said, hey, you've got no choice, you have to figure out how to do this remotely. Federal IT is now saying, great, we have no choice but to figure out how to modernize the way that we support and become proactive, because we know I have the resources or the facilities to be able to do it the old way that we did it. So that's the analogy I would use, is that it's just cramming, again, probably another 10 years worth of change into the next 2 or 3 years, probably.
100%. Unsurprisingly, I mean, is there any other way that this heightened attention has shaped these conversations that you're regularly having, would you say, or is that kind of articulated there?
Yes. So this is definitely interesting. Is that so? I think, as you know, I've been talking to government for the last several years around digital employee experience, and prior to 2025. Yes, there's a drive for how do we drive IT efficiency, but a lot of the conversation focused around how do we enhance the end user experience and drive the mission of the agency, and we do that by basically creating more happy, effective employees doing that job. But in 2025, it's much more of an existential conversation for IT operations. They're trying to figure out how to survive in this what's the new normal, basically. And so it has sharpened the focus. It's really all about what's my return on investment? What's that benefit of becoming proactive in how I do IT support? And it's not that nobody cares about what the end user's experience is, but that's just, again, they're just trying to figure out how to survive in this new way of doing this. And I go back to a good example of a bureau that we're having a conversation with. In the last 8 months, they lost a third of their IT support headcount. So their service desk is a third of what it used to be at this point. And they used to previously only do desk side support in office. So if Tim had a problem, I knew where his desk was, and he called me, and I would go to his desk and help fix, sort him out. Well, no, number one, they no longer have that physical location. They actually now have more of a hotel style office space that's not nearly as large as it used to be. And number two, they don't have nearly the number of support personnel. So overnight, again, it's existentially, how do I continue to do IT support without basically having the resources that I had 8 months ago? And that's the kind of conversation that we're mostly having at this point. The end user thing is a benefit of that, but it's really about IT operations at this point.
So, Chris, I'll offer you my welcome back to the show as well. It's been real fun, not only working with you over the last couple of years, but especially over the last 6 months, working closely with the team, traveling to different events. You and I, we've talked a lot about our acceleration in this space and how close we were. So seeing where we are today is I know it's exciting for the team, and it is for me too. I think the way I'm looking at this is that the federal space that we're now working with is famously and maybe even paradoxically known for both efficiency and inefficiency, waste and waste reduction, right? If you ask any American on the street about the urban legend, where in the United States can you buy a $10,000 hammer? They're probably going to say it's a federal agency somewhere. So there couldn't be a better place for NextThink to bring tremendous value than to our federal workforce. Where do you see DEX and the insights that we can enable playing into the broader missions of efficient operations, data-driven intelligence, and like you just pointed out, doing more with less?
So you're absolutely right. Is that that kind of the those stories exist for a reason. Is that there's been government is not necessarily always operated like a business where there's a very fine focus on return on investment and the bottom line and profitability. And obviously, profitability is not a concept in government.
Right.
But there is now, to your point, there's just a lot more focus on accountability of the investment. Am I getting a return for the money that we're spending, and how we're spending it and how we're going about doing it? And so, two things is that number one, and this was something that had already begun, but government has become digital, and it's increasingly becoming more digital. Is that on the defense side, there's the term, there's the digital warfighter. Is that all the processes, the ways that the U.S. military goes and carries out its mission, it's becoming much more digital. On the civilian side of government, the exact same thing. Is that the way that citizens want to engage with government is more of a digital fashion. Again, I hate having to bring up the pandemic again, but if I want to go and get my driver's license and the only option is an in-person option and the office is closed, well, what do I do about it then? The government was already basically learning the lessons of the pandemic and digitizing a lot of these processes. So DEX is a natural extension. Is that we're already heading in that direction. How do we make digital government more efficient? But then I go back to that challenge is now there's more oversight and more interest on accountability for funding than ever before. So DEX does two things. Is DEX is the GPS that charts, hey, we're going to make this investment. We're going to use this technology to solve this problem in our agency. And the GPS charts the path. Is it, you want to go from A to B, here's where you need to go. It actually charts it out. But DEX is now also the referee, because it's the referee in the terms of are we accountable? Like, we said that we'd score 5 points by now. Have we actually done that? How many points do we have? And so DEX is really actually measuring the result, the impact. And again, not from a profitability perspective, but from just still a return. Is that, I put this money in, am I getting a capability in return? And there's really not been a good way to do that in the past. We've actually seen government organizations like the U.S. Navy. The U.S. Navy's actually shifted how they even do their portfolio management of their IT projects, and it's called world-class alignment metrics, or WAMs. And the world-class alignment metrics are actually things like this, like dollars saved per end user, or number of minutes spent supporting an end user. And it's very practical terms. So DEX can help actually measure those. But as you know, DEX can also help chart the best way to get to where you want to go as well.
Yeah. So let's talk about what the team has been working so hard on for a number of years, but like we talked about most recently in the last 6 months or so, and getting to a place where we are now in process for FedRAMP. So we've been asking for a long time, when will it be now? For all of you Spaceballs fans out there, it's right now, right?
Yeah.
For those who don't live and breathe that in that compliance world, what does it mean?
So yeah, I love that Spaceball reference. Is that when will then be now?
Well, you
Soon.
just missed it.
Yeah, yeah. So when is now? And so FedRAMP, for those who do not know, FedRAMP is now actually of 2023. It's the law of the land. And so before it was founded about, I think 2011, I believe, or 12, and it was actually a certification in industry certification for cloud computing technology. So basically, if a cloud computing technology, a federal agency wanted to utilize it, it was highly suggested that it be FedRAMP compliant. FedRAMP is basically a security certification built off the NIST 800.53 control families. It looks and feels a lot like ISO or SOC Type 1 and Type 2 in terms of the types of controls and the levels of security and details it gets into. It's actually even more robust, as I understand it. It's extremely difficult to prepare for and to harden your product and then to operate your SaaS product in a manner that is FedRAMP compliant. So it is not something that's taken lightly. It takes a lot of investment to do. It is the law of the land now. So now, as of 2023, if a federal agency wants to use a cloud product, especially a SaaS product, it must be FedRAMP compliant. So now we're bringing the only soon to be only FedRAMP authorized DEX platform to market to solve these challenges we've been discussing for the organization. The impact for federal is the number one is that they're legally compliant. It's the easy button to consume this technology versus trying to figure out how to do something at maybe more of a legacy type of deployment model. But number two, all of that investment in security and operations trickles down into all of the way that Nextlink operates our technologies, even in the commercial sector. So it's going to, kind of the rising water makes all boats rise, is that it's going to improve compliance and security for all the customers that we serve. But really the big one is, again, it's the easy button, is that if there are security concerns, compliance concerns, regulatory concerns, when you're FedRAMP authorized, those are now just a process that you've got to go through and tick the box, and really focuses the conversation around the capability, the value that we can bring to that federal agency.
So when I hear federal, my brain normally just goes right to DoD, but federal is so much bigger than Department of Defense. But even just in a couple of those segments, right? Air Force, I think we talked about 800,000 people and devices, Army, 1.2 million. As an IT person, I can't imagine managing environments that big, and even just deciding where to start. Where does this huge cohort start first? Right, we're hardened for compliance, but what in your view, what specific problems or inefficiencies do you feel that inefficiency solves right out of the gate now that it's tailored for federal?
Well, so with Infinity, and Infinity is the leading DEX platform here to allow organizations to see, diagnose, and fix issues that impact user experience at scale. So
Mm-hmm.
it's this best in class capability that the government will now be able to access and use within their environments. And so the what I call kind of the meat and potatoes capabilities of DEX, of being able to move in that reactive model. If somebody does take time out of their job, calls in with a ticket, we can much more quickly figure out what is the problem, what's the issue, how many people are affected other than the person calling, and then use automations to solve those problems at scale. But with Infinity in particular, the other really two interesting things that I see is that it's all of the AI and machine learning that's built into that, the suggestion. So as as we become proactive, we don't want to gather data for data's sake. We want it to be actionable, and we want to actually have recommendations of, hey, everybody in the organization might be using a version of a software that it's less stable than another version that's known to be much better, much more performant, and gathering that data and insight in an actual manage a way for an organization like the Army that's got millions of end users to be able to figure out, hey, this is the problem we have, and AI is telling us that if we fix that problem, it's going to have the most amount of kind of positivity for our end users than another one. It really helps rack and stack the way and the investment and the things that they're doing tactically, and then even more strategically in kind of projects that they invest in. Prior to that, we've seen, just like everybody else, those IT organizations really had to take a best guess. And I go back to the one that we talked about a few years ago, is that the hashtag fix our computers with the U.S. Air Force, and that was a poor performance issue that got escalated out into the world. It was a Twitter rant by an employee, and the initial solution was, we're just going to spend more money on endpoint hardware. We're going to refresh it. Mm-hmm. Well, when they got in there and actually got the metrics and understood that, well, sure, maybe the in hardware was causing some of the issue, but the majority of the issue was actually other areas with the network and applications that were loaded on the device. And that's the kind of capability we can provide them now at scale, is that let's get to the root cause so you can figure out how to better spend taxpayers' dollars basically on that. The other thing I mentioned in particular is that, again, the world's already gone hybrid. Government is doing that. As we mentioned, government's going digital. An area that we can do very well with Infinity is things around collaboration tools and collaboration platforms. So Teams, Zoom, other things like that, because those are now mission critical systems that honestly weren't even really considered kind of main use about 4 or 5 years ago. Now it's something that every federal employee uses in some aspect, just like the rest of the world, on a daily basis. That's something we can really help them with the Infinity platform in a way that we could not do before bringing our SaaS capabilities to government.
Hey, Chris, and welcome back to the podcast. And I also want to say thank you for your input. I think it was a month ago. It feels like a year ago, but with the report that we put together, you and your teammates, on, it's called The Cost of Doing Nothing, Why Public Sector Productivity Lags Behind Other Industries. You can find it on the nextthink.com/resource page. If you search for productivity or public sector, that will pop up. So thank you for the work that you guys put into that report. But I had a question. So you're currently during the FedRAMP process. Now I'm curious, like, what comes next? What comes after this? What's the roadmap, I suppose, in terms of NextThink government offerings and how you're continuing to partner with agencies through these digital shifts?
Yeah, no, so for us, so as I mentioned, we're FedRAMP in process, and for those who aren't familiar, that means that we have our environment, we have hardened it, we've fully documented it, which is actually thousands of pages of documentation, for those who aren't aware. So it's no mean feat to be able to do that, and we're now in the process with our third-party auditor. The FedRAMP process itself in the last 8 months has also undergone significant change. The FedRAMP program has rolled out what they call FedRAMP 20X, which is a modernization of the process. We're being certified under Rev 5. But the big benefit with these changes is that the timeline to finalize the authorization has been greatly shortened. So we fully expect to be authorized by early fall. So we'll be FedRAMP moderate in the marketplace. We're in the marketplace today, is in process, but we'll be fully authorized by early fall. So again, that basically means that any organization can then consume us and can go out to the marketplace to pull down our security package and do their own security review at that point. So we'll have that. That's the first step, and that really opens the floodgates in being able to support organizations. The other thing that we intend to do as we move forward, so FedRAMP moderate was the first step that we've got. There are several levels of security classification in FedRAMP. We intend to go higher up. We intend to actually go up to IL4 or IL5 to support our DoD customers. Today, we also actually have another version of the platform called NextThink Self-Managed. This is a virtual appliance architecture for organizations, as we discussed, that maybe aren't ready to use the cloud or have too many security requirements. Maybe it's an air-gapped network that's offline and can't connect to the cloud. And so self-managed exists, and it solves a lot of these problems, as we talked about, of being able to see, diagnose, and fix. But we're going to take Infinity, which is the best of breed, and bring it all the way up to a version that can be consumed by the DoD. And that will happen over time here as we work with those clients as well.
That's great to hear. And it sounds you actually answered some of the questions I had. I was curious about the second half of 2025, but I have another good question. I'm curious, what advice would you give to federal IT teams trying to make progress amid all the noise that's happening?
So I think I would go back to what we talked about a moment ago. The DEX is both the GPS and the referee. It's, what's our path, and then are we actually making progress? Are we scoring goals the way we intended to? I would suggest you can deploy it to assess what's going on and baseline what your issues are. It's something that is very easily done. That we even work with an organization just to give them that snapshot to show them where they want to go and what the problems are. Um, as I mentioned a moment ago, back to the Air Force example several years ago, they thought, oh, well, we'll just buy more hardware. Well, turns out the actual problem was something different. That's something we can actually get tangible proof of in a very short order and be able to help an organization chart that path for their way forward. So that would bring that, and I would also add is that this is something I think, as you guys know, you talked to a lot of experts in the years here, that this move to proactive IT and the use of DEX to drive IT operations is something that is now widely adopted in commercial. And now is one of those times I would suggest to really lean in and see, well, what is the commercial best practice? How are the best ways that large organizations are doing this, even if they're not a government agency and maybe don't have some of the similar security concerns or process concerns that there. Because again, I believe that much of what of the challenges we're solving for a commercial organization are very relevant today, given the new focus around efficiency and accountability on budgets as well.
Hey, Chris, welcome back. So, one of the standout benefits mentioned in the announcement was helping agencies reduce software waste and increase IT automation. How are these outcomes translating in the real world? And can you share any early feedback or expectations?
Sure. So that's one that's driven a lot of interest out of the gate in the last several months, and with the size and the scale of a government agency, typically, in some cases, it's far bigger than a global enterprise, and they use even more software than a commercial entity. The result here is that there are a couple organizations we've spoken to that believe that, hey, we know we're over licensed in our subscription software. We think that we could save between 500 million and $1 billion a year in kind of normalizing and rationalizing our software spend if we deployed a tool like this. Now that's on the far side of the scale. That's one of the really large organizations. But every single entity we've spoken to within the federal government has some level of interest in rationalizing their hardware and their software spend and usage, and being able to actually see, what's licensed and what are people actually using. It can have a massive impact. Maybe not necessarily $1 billion a year, but commensurate to the size of an organization, it's a similar level of impact for them. So it's a big deal for them potentially.
Totally agree. Not just from a compliance perspective, but also from utilization, underutilization, or even overutilization, it would give them a lot of perspectives. Just even starting from the C aspect, and then you move on to diagnosing and fixing afterwards. How
Exactly.
important is it for agencies not just to meet compliance standards, but to use that secure environment to push towards a continuous digital improvement? And what does that evolution look like in practice? How does Nexting support it?
So, as I mentioned before, government is already modernizing, is already going digital, and so it is very important. So compliancy obviously matters from a legal point of view. Is that this is the law of the land that these agencies have to follow, but it's also the most secure way to do this to protect citizens' data and information, and the mission of these agencies. So it is very critical that they follow these from a compliance perspective. But this continuous digital improvement is because everything has become digital. So the workflows that were maybe manual or analog are now all becoming digital. And so the idea that it can't be a one and done, because more and more of the mission is becoming digital. It needs to be continuous in the way that they see and refine and fix issues in delivering those capabilities. So it is becoming more and more important. And I go back to, it's the roadmap, it's the GPS that actually charts what's the underlying problem. It is the no kidding way that somebody can figure out where are our issues, where do we invest, because otherwise, I think Tim had mentioned that, is that the breadth of responsibility for these organizations is so broad. I don't understand how else they would really figure out where to start without just taking a guess at that point.
Totally agree to that. And when you talk to federal IT leaders, how much of the DEX conversation is about user satisfaction? Since now we're starting to go more and more, like you just mentioned, into the depth of digitalization, right? Or making everything super digital. So, how much is about mission readiness or public service delivery? And is there a mind shift or a mindset shift underway?
Yes, so they go hand in hand. Is that mission readiness and mission capability and that is always the focus of these IT organizations. It's carrying out the mission, but again, is they're realizing that the mission is greatly affected if the end user has a poor experience, has a problem and a challenge, especially if their entire workload is moving towards the digital side of the house. So they're very much tied together, but the focus is always framed around mission capability and mission delivery. Um, it's not that people don't care about the end user experience; is that the end user experience really equates to the mission capability in these federal agencies.
Phenomenal, Chris. You've not been it's not been a long time since you were back, but there's been plenty to talk about, and not only in your sector, but inside NextThink and the capabilities we're offering. And thanks to Sean, not only for reminding us to draw attention to the report he mentioned on IT in the Fed sector and the impact of AI and AI preparedness there. But for authoring that report, it's an excellent read. The cost of doing nothing: why public sector productivity lags behind other industries. You can get it for free. Download it from the show notes, and we'll also include links so interested listeners can learn more about FedRAMP. Chris, always a pleasure. Let's hope the sector calms down a little bit, although if it doesn't, it would be a pleasure to have you on in another 6 to 8 months, my friend.
I appreciate it. I hope it calms down as well. But thank you so much for having me twice this year. I really appreciate it.
So do we. Take care.
To make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a rating of the show. Just tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. If you'd like to learn more about how NextThink can help you improve your digital employee experience, head over to nextthink.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.